Good afternoon and welcome to the Akron Roundtable. I'm Angelina Milo, Board Chair and President of the Akron Roundtable Board of Directors. Today's program will be rebroadcast on Thursday, July 22nd at 8 p.m. on WKSU 89.7 FM. We're delighted that so many of you are able to join us today for this virtual forum, as it is truly our pleasure to welcome to the roundtable stage Regina Cooper Benjamin, Deputy Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. Her topic is Digital Inclusion 101. This will be our last live virtual forum for 2021. We're especially grateful for the support of our virtual forum sponsors and production partners. And thank all of you for joining us remotely during the past year and a half. If you missed any of the programs, you can find the videos and podcasts on our website at akronroundtable.org. Next month, I'm happy to say we'll return to in-person events, but with a special location and time. Please join us at the Akron Civic Theater at 11:30 a.m. on August 19th when we experience excellence in the arts with Dominic Moore Dunson, co-founder of the Akron Black Artists Guild, and Francine Parr, founder and artistic director of the Millennial Theater Project. You may read more about our upcoming events by going to our website. Also, on our podcast page of our website, you may listen to Akron Roundtable programs. We're grateful to the University of Akron and its Excel Center for Experiential Learning for sponsoring our podcast series. We're also grateful for the generous support Akron Roundtable receives from all our sponsors, patrons, and subscribers. In addition, I'm very fortunate to serve alongside such an outstanding group of community leaders dedicated to the Akron Roundtable mission. Please visit our website for a list of our board members and staff. Again, our website address is akronroundtable.org. Today's speaker, Regina Cooper Benjamin, will be introduced by fellow Akron Roundtable board member Pam Hickinson Stevenson, Executive Director of the Akron Summit County Public Library. Ebony Bond, Program Facilitator and Podcaster, will serve as moderator of today's presentation. Following that moderated discussion, Regina has generously agreed to take questions from our audience. Fellow Akron Roundtable board member Emma Lieberth Osborne, Director of Policy and Advocacy of the United Way of Summit and Medina County, will coordinate that portion of the program. To facilitate your questions, we'll be using Ask Her technology. Ask Her technology enables you to submit questions via mobile devices. Questions may be submitted at any time during our program and will be forwarded for review during a Q&A portion. Watch the screen for instructions should you need them. For those of you on social media, please follow us at Akron Roundtable on Facebook and Twitter, and use hashtag Akron Roundtable to continue the conversation. And now it is my pleasure to introduce to you Pam Hickinson Stevenson. Pam?
Thank you, Angelina. As Angelina already stated, Regina Cooper Benjamin currently serves as the Deputy Director of the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which is a nonprofit based in Columbus, Ohio, that serves as a unified voice for home and public broadband access, personal devices, and local technology training and support programs. NDIA works collaboratively to craft, identify, and disseminate financial and operational resources for digital inclusion programs while serving as a bridge to policymakers and the general public. Gina brings to her work at NDIA a deep commitment to using human-centered approaches for solving our toughest problems. She uses technology and data for social good and serves on 2 boards working towards equity, inclusion, and belonging outcomes. She has spent nearly 20 years working in under-resourced communities and with underserved populations in order to close education and housing gaps. She's passionate about introducing Black and Brown youth to technology and coding programs. Before completing her Master of Public Policy from the Urban and Environmental Policy and Planning program at Tufts University as a neighborhood fellow, Gina graduated from Wellesley College as a Davis Scholar and then earned a certificate in nonprofit management and leadership from the Institute for Nonprofit Practice. Those of us who work in public libraries see the negative effects of the digital divide every single day. Those without access to devices, tech skills, and home broadband rely on America's public libraries to apply for jobs, to gain computer and digital literacy skills, and to obtain and use email accounts that are required for so many functions of daily living. I know that you join me in anticipation of the comments that Gina will share with us regarding digital inclusion and the digital divide. Our program will be moderated by Ebony Bond, a local program facilitator and podcaster who has been recognized by the Akron Beacon Journal as a change agent. It is my pleasure to introduce Gina Cooper Benjamin as the July 2021 speaker for the Akron Roundtable.
All right. Hello. I definitely want to thank everyone for this well-organized event today and for having me be the moderator. I'm hoping that this conversation will feel like I'm talking to my favorite cousin, Gina. So Gina, if you could take a few minutes to tell us about your path here. If you've had 20 years of experience, what has that been like?
Thank you, Ebony. And yes, we are like distant cousins who just met recently. I want to thank, first I want to thank the Akron Roundtable organizers for inviting me. And I really want to thank Ebony for stepping up and moderating this session. I'm really appreciative to both of you. I'm really excited to be here today to discuss digital inclusion with your community. To start, at NDIA, when we talk about digital inclusion, we talk about 3 or 4 legs of the stool. So if you've ever visited our website or heard us speak anywhere, we talk about these 3 or 4 legs. And those 3 or 4 legs are ubiquitous free affordable broadband in homes, free low-cost devices, digital skills, and one-on-one tech support. I believe that this conversation is really important to your community because before I got here, I kind of did some research, and I know that 29% of the households in Summit County are without broadband. What this tells me is that, and what we know from research is that households without broadband, you probably don't feel like have the devices, or maybe you have a phone, but you don't have a computer or a tablet. So all of these things, and if you don't have those things, you probably don't need digital skills training or tech support. So all of these things are, that's just to say that all of these things are connected, but I'll talk a little more about that in a bit. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day to connect with me and learn more about digital inclusion. First, I'm going to spend a few moments to share a bit more about myself. So throughout my career, I've done a bunch of things. Work that focuses on inclusion, equity, justice, community building, advocacy. And then I spent a great chunk of my time focusing on data and evaluation methodologies and research. So I've done a bunch of things throughout my career. I started doing work to narrow the achievement gap in the out of school time field. And so what this means is I worked at an organization that provided summer and after school programs for kids across the country. And in that capacity, I worked as a data and evaluation person. So I first kind of got a hint as I'm talking about my path. I'm going to connect it to this work. I first kind of got a hint of this the understanding digital disparities when I worked at this organization. We had scan and score technology in the school so that we could give teachers real-time data. So students would take tests, or they would take quizzes, and they were the idea was that teachers would be able to scan the scorecards and produce reports and then use that to inform instruction. When we got to some of the school sites though, there were firewalls in place that prevented this. So it delayed their ability to do this, which impacts the classroom and learning. The second thing that kind of like really impacted me during this time is once we did a site visit, to a wealthy community, very wealthy community in Massachusetts. And when we got there, we were learning about about their outcomes and how they're doing their work. And one of the things that stood out to me was the fact that every student at the school was required to have a laptop. Every student, not some, all of them, and not just a computer lab. They had to have a laptop. So at a young age, these wealthier kids were learning about connectivity, devices, and getting the 21st century skills that they need to navigate the digital world. And this to me stood in like stark contrast to some of the school sites that we served in under-resourced communities where they didn't have enough books for each student. After I worked there, I moved to a community organization serving homeless youth. During this time, I really wanted to get those youth connected to programs, specifically coding programs. I know that people don't necessarily like to focus on coding as a means, but I had a connection at one specific coding program regionally, and I would bring students over there, or would encourage them to go over there because those coding skills to me were a way out of poverty. They were a way for not only for our youth to learn hard skills, but also some soft skills, transferable skills that they could take with them to other industries and other places of work. So upon reflection, I've always been on this path to digital inclusion work. A huge part of my work is remembering the people. I approach all of my work by maintaining like a balance between data, because data is really important, but also lived experience, because lived experience is equally, if not more important. I almost forgot about this. So I think Ebony and Pam mentioned a youth project I created. It's called Hacking It. It's for young Black and brown girls. It's rooted in community building, civic engagement, and social impact philosophies and practices. It's deeply personal to me. Growing up, I felt like sometimes I was silenced. So I created this project to help other young girls who look like me, like discover their silence. I say my motto to them is get loud, get political, and get teching. So you discover your silence. Let's figure out what's going on in your community issues. And then we use participatory processes, and I teach them about participatory processes to kind of get their voices heard and then get them on an online platform so other people can learn about what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay. That's a little bit of a lot there. You said something that, I wanted to touch on also when you said people don't like to focus on coding, but you do because you see it as a way to get out of poverty. And that's, also me. I went into engineering and came back to school for engineering because poverty was not for me. I couldn't afford to go across town, let alone out of town. So I definitely, agree that STEM being a pathway, out of poverty. And you talked a little bit about the work at NDIA as far as the 3 pillars of broadband, devices, and then the skills. Can you talk a little bit more about your role at NDIA and what your work looks like there?
Sure. So full disclosure, I joined NDIA in February. I still consider myself a newbie. We have newer staff members who they're just like, Gina, you're no longer a newbie, but I think I'm a newbie. And I joined NDIA largely because NDIA is the only national organization that I know of that puts all of those pieces that you just mentioned, the 3 or 4 legs of the stool, Ebony, together for a huge impact across the country. I would even say across the world, just so you know, because we actually have people reach out to us from other countries. They like find our website online and they're just like, hey, we need to know more about this. And we have conversations with people. While we are a national organization, we were founded in Columbus, Ohio, and we have deep roots in Ohio. About 1/4 of our team lives there. We're actually about to have a team retreat in Ohio. We are working with groups throughout the state on digital inclusion. We're working with Columbus Metro Library to provide advocacy support for the Columbus Coalition, and we are working with Vantage Aging to establish a digital navigators program. NDIA, in short, is a unified voice for home broadband access, personal devices, technology training, and tech support. What we do, that's I think is like, when I came in, I just think it's amazing how we do this. We provide spaces and opportunities that includes events like our Net Inclusion Conference, our community calls, working groups, a robust listserv. We provide these spaces and opportunities for practitioners to meet and discuss what's happening in their local communities. And we take what we learn and we create resources. We put those resources on our website. We have an open source model. If you go to our website, I'll drop the link in the chat in a minute. If you go to our website and you see something that you like, you can use it and replicate it and do what you want with it. We provide tools that our local communities can replicate or policymakers can use to inform their decisions. We use all of what we learn to advocate for our community. We represent about 600 affiliated organizations in 44 states, Washington, D.C., and the U.S. Virgin Islands. All of our positions are based on what we learn from our affiliates. And then I'll say this quickly. In my role at NDIA, I focus on, I do a bunch of things. So I'm the deputy director, kind of wear a bunch of hats. But one of the biggest projects I'm working on now is our strategic planning roadmap over the next 18 months. With the help of some really great consultants. So over the last year, as we all know, this digital first world we live in, NDIA has been relied upon for our expertise. The strategic plan is important for a few reasons. The last 18 months have been a remarkable time for all of us. The pandemic elevated the discussion around the digital divide. We see these disparities now that we're going now, like, I guess my question to all of you and to myself a lot of the time is, what are we going to do about them? So for us right now, with the massive amount of attention that folks are paying to digital inclusion, we get requests every day for support. It's important that we're strategizing about how best to serve our community and connect with community members and get information and share it. Another thing we're doing is we want to get out of this process is that there's a huge amount of federal stimulus funding going towards this work. I'm not our policy director or manager, so I'm not going to talk about that, but we're talking billions of dollars here. If you've heard about the emergency broadband benefit, that's $3.2 billion. There's the emergency connectivity fund that for schools and library reimbursements for free broadband service. There's their American Rescue Plan Act. There's just so much money out there. And so that's important. And then third, this is just a pivotal time. Like, there's been massive growth in this ecosystem. We've seen a considerable growth in our number of coalitions who we're doing work with. Our team has tripled since last year because of the importance of this work. And we're really just leaning in to help local practitioners.
Thank you. So you mentioned you're going to be coming to Ohio for a retreat. That means that you should definitely visit Akron, Ohio.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier about the like stark differences between the school that you went to and every student, like it was like them having a laptop was just a part of it. And then even mentioning Summit County, and I think you said 26% of homes don't even have broadband. What do the terms digital equity and digital inclusion mean?
Okay, that we get asked that question frequently. At NDIA, digital equity is the goal. This is, in summary, it's kind of just like, it means everyone is connected to our digital world, especially for me, those who are most likely to be disconnected. Also for me, digital equity is inextricably linked to racial equity. The digital divide impacts those most historically underrepresented in a way that alters their life opportunities and outcomes. Digital equity means addressing disparities in policies that have historically left certain community members behind. It allows for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy, and it's necessary for civic and cultural participation, employment, lifelong learning, and access to essential services.
Mm-hmm.
To support that, we have digital inclusion, and these are the activities that get us closer to digital equity. So I'll probably say 3 or 4 legs of a stool several times throughout this conversation. So my apologies now, but the digital inclusion activities are those 3 or 4 legs of the stool. They represent the broadband access and adoption. They represent the devices I talked about. They represent digital skills training and opportunities and one-on-one tech support. All of these legs of the stool are important so that community members can feel comfortable, confident, and secure when accessing healthcare, education, job opportunities, education, banking, civic forums, and other opportunities online. If we only address one of the things, so let's say, for instance, we only address broadband, not the other things, we're kind of building a stool incorrectly, and that's imbalance. We need to create a balanced stool to reach digital equity, and we aren't going through this unless we address all of the legs.
So how has the pandemic affected digital equity and digital inclusion?
This is a good question. Oh, okay. So the pandemic. So, we have all had to adjust. We've all had to kind of pivot. So digital divide. So I don't know if this is true of everyone on this call, but I actually was having a virtual conversation with someone and who told me, they said, I didn't know that about the digital divide until the pandemic. I was just like, what? It sounds crazy, but it's true. Like, people had this epiphany, like all of a sudden when people had to school from home or work from home, it's like people don't have internet and people don't have devices. And it's like, yeah, this has been true for a while. Where have you guys been? So awareness has grown immensely. There are new practitioners. They're connecting with NDIA all of the time. I have a few links, but I'll post those after I'm done talking. You can look at our affiliates map and see what people are doing in your local community. People have had to adapt. They've had to pivot to become to address this new reality we all are living in. So I think that now is our moment, our digital equity moment. We know we're having a lot more conversations. This is one of them, but these aren't one-time conversations. They have to be recurring conversations. And yeah, so I just think, I think for me, the thing that's really stood out is people not understanding that the digital divide exists. And it has existed before the pandemic and it will exist after. So we just all need to work together around it.
So you mentioned that there are like new practices, and on your website, you guys can see the local practitioners that you work with. How does working with local practitioners actually show up in your work?
It shows up in a few ways. I'm excited to share some of those ways with you. We work with practitioners who work with people on the ground. We're all about our community. I've said it many times. All of our work ties back to the on the ground work. First, we train practitioners on how to implement digital navigator program models in their community. If you haven't heard digital navigators, a lot of people you've probably experienced one or know someone who has as a result of the pandemic. I'm just going to take a digital navigators are really trusted individuals on the ground who understand community members and are there to problem solve, to support and find answers and solutions. They address the whole digital inclusion process, all of those legs of the stool we discussed. It looks different from community to community. So sometimes they're volunteers, sometimes they're paid staff members. It will vary. A trained digital navigator, though, is able to assess a community member's needs and guide them towards resources, solutions, and help them problem solve. We also have coming up in October, this is an annual thing, we have our Digital Inclusion Week. I'm getting really excited about Digital Inclusion Week because we've started the planning process for it. The theme for this year is Pathways to Digital Empowerment. Please mark your calendars, October 4th through October 8th. Digital Inclusion Week aims to raise awareness of solutions addressing home internet access, personal devices, and local technology training and support programs. So we're getting back to those legs of the stool again. What we ask of local community members is to just create an activity. Use our social media kit and use the hashtags we create to uplift this in your communities or nationally. Some activities that people have done in the past: internet costs, speak outs, mapping of the digital divide, and then engaging local officials. There were some community pop-up events like device donation drives, resume rallies, and internet enrollment events. If you're doing this work in your community, then please sign up to participate. I'm going to pop the link for Digital Inclusion Week 2021 in the chat after I'm done talking, and then sign up to host events. You can do them in person or virtual. We also have our Digital Inclusion Trailblazers. These are a local government honor roll of digital inclusion activities. So we just announced our 2021 Trailblazers. Basically, you can apply if you're doing this work in your local government. And there are 6 indicators. Basically, do you have staff? Do you have a strategic plan in place for digital equity? Do you have a coalition in your city? Do you have funds for digital inclusion programming? There are 6 areas of criteria, but we just announced it. It's really important for us. And I think that we want more cities to kind of join us. Go to the website, see what other cities are doing. We actually have, like I said, we use an open source model. So we have resources on this page, on our Trailblazers page, for local governments to use and see what other cities are doing. And then you can replicate it. You don't have to start from scratch. There are ideas there and documentation that shows how other people are doing this work.
Okay, so you mentioned the digital divide, often, and I believe earlier in the conversation, you mentioned how these digital inequities are linked to racial inequities. What do you mean when you say some of these things, and why do you think it's important and to even realize the connection between the two?
Okay, this is a heavy question, but I'm going to attempt. I'm going to talk about a few things here. So
You got it.
Everything is happening online. We know that the group that is most digitally excluded are those from low-income backgrounds. That connection between income and broadband adoption, in the sense that those in low-income households are less likely to have broadband, puts them at a significant disadvantage, I think. Historically marginalized and underrepresented groups, they miss out on economic opportunities, workforce opportunities, and advancement. Education outcomes and life outcomes look different. Health outcomes look different. Civic engagement opportunities. There are other basic day-to-day interactions with digital technology, like banking. That's something we all do online. But if you don't have access to those things online, then you're at a disadvantage. There's also there's data that kind of backs up this. So we cite the American Community Survey. It says 36 million households in total are without wireline internet access. 26 million of those homes are in urban areas compared to 10 that are in rural areas. Pew Research also highlights the communities that have the highest percentages of being offline include low income, high school dropouts, and people of color, so Black and Latino families. We have research out there that shows us these disparities And we also, so we have, I'm gonna highlight one more thing. I'm just trying to, I'm looking for the link. We actually, and I will also pop this in the chat, sorry. I'm putting these to the side so that I can put them in the chat for you after this conversation. We have a white paper that NDIA, and by we, I mean NDIA, before I got here even, on limited broadband investment to rural only discriminates against Black Americans and other communities. And what this paper says is that excessive focus on broadband deployment and lack of focus on all other in rural areas and lack of focus on all other communities causes of and all other causes of home broadband creates barriers of racial disparities. So this is all to say that there is a bunch of research out there that supports this claim that the digital inequities are linked to racial inequities. And I will share some of that research with you after this conversation.
So, you're going to be sharing resources, and it sounds like you guys have toolkits that, people can use as a resource as well. How would you encourage others who want to get, started in this work besides like exploring your website and checking out these resources?
So, well, there are a few ways. The first I'm going to say is you should join us at NDIA. So join our community. There are, we have, it's free for nonprofit organizations and government entities. You can be as active as you want. We have Google Groups listserv. You can post and have conversations with other community members. We have a newsletter. There are just so many ways to use NDIA's tools and resources that you should access. We also have a digital inclusion startup manual. This startup manual goes through, it has 9 chapters. It's a pretty robust tool. It covers things like what is community digital inclusion programming, choosing your focus in that for digital inclusion programming, getting started, digital literacy training, affordable internet access, affordable devices, tech support, and building long-term support for your digital inclusion programming. So it's a very robust tool and resource. And then we have a coalition's guidebook, and this is really, really important to us. So we're actually updating this guidebook right now. But what is a coalition? A coalition is an organization of organizations operating in the public realm with an organized structure. So you have libraries, community-based organizations, governments, local governments, housing authorities, and others who are cooperating to address equitable access, digital equity. And then how do you start a coalition? You're probably thinking. We actually have a guidebook for that. And I'll pop that in. Like I said, we're updating that guidebook. So just be patient. Some of it might look a little outdated, but we'll have a new guidebook soon. And this guidebook reflects lessons learned from 6 established community-wide digital inclusion coalitions. And we know that since the pandemic started, that there are many more coalitions, and reflecting our guidebook to include these additions to that ecosystem.
So I have one final question before we wrap up. What would be your final parting thoughts to us? There's lots of information that you bestowed upon us, but what would you leave us with?
Okay, so if I had one parting thought, oh gosh. I would say, remember like the human component of this work. So whether or not we see or understand it, the digital divide affects us all. Even if you don't see how it affects you personally, it affects someone that you know without a doubt. This is a problem that exists across generations, across abilities, across socioeconomic statuses, across education levels. So we talk about the digital divide. It seems like pretty theoretical. To be clear, I want to share that closing the digital divide is not as easy as it seems. So we're talking about technology here. as technology evolves, people start, like there are new people learning technology, even myself, I'm learning new things. People are starting at different baselines. People are starting at different skill levels. There's always going to be a bit of a gap between what we currently know and what different people currently know, and what's happening. This is this, you know, it doesn't mean we don't do the work. And so this is not some dire warning. I do think that there are some solutions. We collaborate across sectors. We listen to the people who are most excluded and create processes that are participatory so that they can inform decision making. You know, if you see, if in your community adoption is an issue, advocate for like, just because the, you know, we have wires on the ground doesn't mean that people are adopting it. So advocate, use trusted community-based organizations for this advocacy work to get people, you have to do outreach, you have to do the work to get people online. If if devices are an issue in your community, there are, we need discount internet offers, we need refurbishers, people who are skilled in these areas and can provide community members with options. And then, you know, I just think figure out what the what the issues are, assess them in your community, and kind of look for solutions to those issues. I think that's a huge part of the role NDIA plays, is really connecting people to local solutions, or elevating local solutions in different communities, seeing what people are doing, and then and sharing that with, not only through our listserv or on our website, but sharing it with policymakers so we see different policies. You know, don't be afraid to be the digital equity change agent in your community. It's what I'll leave you with.
Thank you. Thank you. So what I'm hearing, you know, a lot of in terms of inclusion and equity is that there are certain processes that you guys have in place to have it be more inclusive, and activities that you encourage people to engage in so that the human component is there, so that you may get to the outcome of equity, which hopefully those things together are justice. So you guys can definitely check out NDIA to help you with those processes so that you can get those outcomes and hopefully bring about some justice in, you know, our communities, particularly hopefully Summit County. I definitely want to thank you for allowing me to be your interviewer today. And I am going to turn it back over to Akron Roundtable to build some of these questions from our participants today. So thank you again. You all have a great day. I'm going to join the audience.
Thank you, Ebony.
All right. So just a reminder, if anybody has some additional questions for our presenter, the link to the Ask Her technology is located in the chat function. Thank you, Gina, for participating in the Akron Roundtable today. I know that we are all very excited to have you and to talk more about this conversation. And for the audience, Gina has also agreed to take some questions from the group. And so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We have received a few throughout your presentation, but I'm going to go ahead and start it off with, what's the most exciting project that you have worked on?
Oh, okay. Since I've joined NDIA in February, there's like a lot happening. For me, I'm trying to think. Announcing the 2021 Trailblazers was pretty exciting. I'm working on a bunch of projects, so I hope I'm not offending anyone in my organization by highlighting this one specific one, but it's really, because I'm new to NDIA and still learning, the Trailblazers was a really big opportunity for me to learn more about all of the local work happening across the country, like how staff are, like how do you get a digital inclusion staffer or advocate at the local government, or how do you put together a strategic roadmap towards digital equity in your community? How are people focusing on affordability in their communities? So for me, the Trailblazers project is huge. It supports a lot of community members. It supports local governments. It's a pretty exciting project.
Great, thank you. Next question. In your opinion, why isn't broadband a utility? And wouldn't this assure more access to equity?
Yeah, I mean, I want to ask you guys that question. You know, that's a hard question. I wish I had an answer to that one for you guys. Like you, I do feel that broadband is essential. Broadband is essential. I think we need meaningful legislation or policy to getting it into homes. So I would suggest to you, go to our website. And when I didn't share the links throughout this because I don't like, it's just hard to share links and talk at the same time. But but on our website, we have so many resources for federal stimulus funding, how to advocate for funding in your community, how to what the funding can be used for. And so there's just a lot of you know, there's a lot of ways that our people, or like everyday people, can go to our legislators and kind of advocate for what we want. So.
Okay. Great. So looking through some of these other questions, what is something that people misunderstand about your work?
I think this is evident from the last question. I don't have all the answers. People come to us many times and they want to know, they want answers. And we actually, our community is really important for getting those answers. So we look at you guys sometimes for those answers. I remember when I was putting together questions for a panel I moderated on why people say no to free internet and what to do about it. I actually went to my team first, said, so what are your thoughts? And everyone's just like, I don't know, that's why we're having a panel. You know, like people, and the answer to that is, it's complicated. It is not too complicated. It is, you know, we need trusted community members. We need trusted or community-based organizations to really help spread the word about these programs that exist for opportunities for our community members. That's community members. There's like a bit of distrust when you tell people something's free. What do you mean that's free? Well, it's free, like here it is. But you have to build trust within your communities. So I would say that, you know, people think that I have all the answers. I'm happy to share with you. I do not.
See here, so we'll get through a couple more questions and then we'll let you get on your way with this beautiful July weather day we're having here. Let's see here. So the issue of broadband is obvious, as you had mentioned in your presentation. A lot of folks may not have known that broadband was an issue until the start of the pandemic. And since the start of the pandemic, we have seen a movement in the state of Ohio specifically about the issue of municipal broadband programs. So how can we as a community work with the government to support the broadband initiatives in the state? But also, what is that disconnect between the issue of broadband and then the issue of municipal government broadband?
So I've heard a little bit about this from my colleagues who are the policy experts around this. And I know that there's some stuff going on in the legislation there. I don't feel, I'm not going to speak on it too much because that's not my sort of realm at NDIA. But if you take that person's information, I am happy to connect them to some of the policy folks at NDIA.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good. And I also know the folks at the Akron Roundtable just posted the link in the chat function to NDIA. So please go ahead. If you have any other questions or need additional information, don't hesitate to look at the NDIA website. Another question that just came in. Do you think the recent federal funding will make a significant impact on narrowing the digital divide?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's not perfect. So this is, I think, our federal government's first stab at this type of funding, and it's amazing. I want everyone to remember that. I don't think it's, I don't think it's perfect, but I do think it's the right step. I do think it's the right step to find to narrowing the digital divide. I do, and we do a lot of work. So I keep saying go to our website, but we actually have. So if you think about the emergency broadband benefit, we have been working on that since the beginning. Since people started, we convened our community members. We asked them, hey, like we allow them to share information. We really, I think with some of these things too, we all kind of sort of play a role too. We really need to get, we need outreach. We need people to know about it. And in some communities, they still don't. Like, or I'm from Massachusetts, and I just saw a program who recently found out about it, posting advertising for it. But this has been going on for months now, and they just found out about it. So we just need all of those locally trusted community members to kind of keep advocating for these things. And if we keep doing that, maybe someone will hear us and keep giving us money. So
sounds great. And here locally as well, we're lucky. We've had many of our local government officials specifically, target the issue of broadband and really dedicate some resources and laptops to the community. But with that being said, if there are individuals who are interested in wanting to do more on this issue, where can they find the data about the numbers in their communities? As far as broadband goes, how can they find out more about that?
Actually, that's a great question, because we actually, in our staff meeting yesterday, we kind of went over this. We get data, so there's lots of data out there. I tried to go through it or above, but I realized I was going to end up talking for too long, and I didn't want to give people like stats, and I was just like, I'm going to bore everyone here to death. But no, so we use the American Community Survey. It's I think the website is census.gov. So you can, and we actually just had our staff member who uses this a lot. He showed us a neat trick yesterday. So when you go to this the American Community Survey's website, if you type in search for the word internet, it'll take you to the chart that you want to see, and then you can drill down based on your state and your community. So it's really cool. You should do that. But also there's just a lot of other research out there that you don't even have to do on your own, like Pew Research. We look at that, and I would visit our site, because we usually find all this research and synthesize it for people, so you don't have to. There's lots of ways to get the research.
Okay, great. We'll go into our just last one or two questions. So a question from the audience. I realize that our urban areas are very important, but what about rural areas? How in rural areas can broadband be established?
That is a great question. Sorry, I'm looking up. I'm not even gonna do this right now. I was going to pop the web page into the chat, but I'm not gonna do it at this moment. So that is a great question. That's another question.
Would you say that it's a similar kind of, as far as advocacy goes, would you recommend that folks really, talk to your legislator, talk to your local governments as far as getting the broadband established in different communities?
It's the same, yeah. That's all I can do. I don't know a lot about the specific topic of rural broadband, but I know that, I gave some stats earlier, like 10 million households in rural areas are without, I think that's what the stat is, are without broadband. So I think that, once again, I would visit our website, look at what we have to offer, but also talk to your local representatives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Organize yourselves.
Okay, so the last question for you today. What have you learned from your work? You've had a long career, really in this space. And, when you think back to your career and what you're working on now at the NDIA, what have you learned? But also, what do you think remain some of the biggest challenges as we move forward, as we come out of the pandemic?
I think collaboration is an extremely effective tool to get things done. I think, so to me, the ability to, and I started off this Q&A session saying, I don't have all the answers, I really don't. But when you collaborate with people who do have some of those answers, when you connect with other people who are interested in the same things that you are interested in, you can get a lot done. You learn a lot. You get, you make progress. So to me, I would say collaboration matters. The digital divide is like, it is so in this, it is something that affects all of us in different ways. And I always say, like, even if you don't think it does, someone it does. So it kind of does affect you, right? You just working together to like come up with community or local solutions to focus on those 3 or 4 legs of the stool that I talked about. That I think that's pretty effective.
Yeah. Yeah, and if there are other questions, but just to be mindful of time, if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to continue to submit those to Asker. We are happy to forward them on to our speaker, as well as to her organization. And Gina just put her email address in the chat as well. So please also feel free to connect with her if there are other questions. I think that this is an issue that has been around for a long time, as you stated, but will continue to evolve and I think become even more top of mind as we come out of the pandemic, which I think really did shine a light on the problems that we have in our communities. So with that, Angelina, I will turn it back over to you. But thank you, Gina, and thank you, Ebony, for doing a great job moderating.
Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Gina. Thank you for informing us about NDIA and also for presenting on such an important issue. On behalf of the Akron Roundtable, it's my pleasure to send to you a Don Drum Sun as a thank you for your time with us today. And this work of art was designed exclusively for the Akron Roundtable by Akron artist Don Drum. We're going to go ahead and mail that out to you. Again, thank you for being with us. And thank all of you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you next month in person on August 19th at the Akron Civic Theater, when we experience excellence in the arts with Dominic Moore Dunson and Francine Parr. Thanks again and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye now.